So again, previously we have studied and seen a case study where I have told you that there was a ATM heist that just take a single use of the vulnerability that the ATM is not supposed to check that a particular patch is coming from which particular server. Okay, so if ATM has the functionality that it can verify that the particular patch, that is false patch, is coming from a particular bank server, then this ATM will not be able to spit out money, and the hackers will not be able to get that. Okay, so it's a very what do you say, it's a very simple thing, but if you're seeing here that the the designer of the software might not seen this particular thing. Okay, so that is why I've said that vulnerability are not intentional. Okay, so they are always unintentional. Okay, so you have designed the software thinking that it is a secure software, but outside of your organization and outside, many people can study your software and can list out the vulnerability that is not there in the first place. Okay, so again, it's a very simple vulnerability, and you are seeing here that how uh, how they are able to dispatch the false patch is because they have been able to get into the bank servers. Okay, so if they are able to get into the bank server, they will be able to know the version number and everything like that. Okay, so they will be able to design a similar kind of a file that a internal bank system are using for this ATM, and this is why they are firstly able to get into the system, and then they are able to design a file that looks very close to a genuine bank or bank patch. Okay, so vulnerability, keep that in mind, vulnerabilities are unintentional. Okay, so the users do not know, the software designer do not know that there is a vulnerability that exists in the system. Okay, now the common vulnerability we have seen this injection. So it is an injection. The threat can be a SQL injection. Keep that in mind. Injection covers all kind of databases here, like SQL, NoSQL, OS, LD, LDAP injections. Okay, so vulnerability is just the difference between a threat and a vulnerability. That threat will be a very specific. Okay, so I can say that SQL injection is a threat. Okay, so any kind of user outside, just select write a command, select star from table name, so that by this it can get the but all the database entries that are stored in the table. Okay, so previously it was this particular attack was so popular that previously the system software engineers were not able to get that how the people are getting particularly all the user base, the details of the users. Okay, so after that they find out it's a very simple command that you just have to write the SQL query. So again, it's a very it's not like that every command is very common. SQL the command will be different, in NoSQL the command will be different, in LDAP injection the command will be different, but you can try each and every time, and if it is returning something, you get to know that previous in the backend which particular kind of a DBMS is being used. Okay, so it can be Microsoft SQL, it can be Oracle's database management system software that is being used. Okay, so these are some of the common vulnerabilities, and it is not commonly specific to a particular operating system. It is common to all the operating system that is being there. Okay, so it can occur in Linux as well as it can occur in Windows as well. Okay, similarly, we have seen XML and external entities, broken access control, and security misconfiguration in the previous lecture. And now there is another thing called cross-site scripting, XSS. We will study that attack in the lab also. But this is just, you have to understand that like SQL, some particular websites use JavaScript. Okay, okay, so what again, if a user, if a particular external entity is able to get that a particular website is using a JavaScript, it can again write simple commands in on the browser to get the internal information. Okay, so like uh, uh, get post and something like this. Okay, so they are able to get the internal information of, if they are able to just, if they are aware of simple commands that are used in JavaScript on the URL path, They can just write one or two things by changing the URL, and they can get the internal thing. Like if it's a very common example that might you have seen in other websites also, that some people are giving the tricks to get the answers if you are getting any kind of a, what you say, a quiz. Okay, so you may have seen that you only have to change one or two things, like in a Google form, you only where wherever form is written, you just have to delete this one and you have to write view analytics. Okay, so maybe you will be able to get that how which particular which the students are answering which particular options correctly. Okay, so previously it was there, view analytics and other kind of thing, that you just have to go there and type specific keywords into the URL, and then you are able to get the answers. Now it is not there because Google has identified this particular thing, and now you will not be able to find anything. Okay, so I'm just saying that previously it was there. Okay, similarly, it is not specific to JavaScript. Okay, so there may be other languages in which you are coding. So if you are not using any secure HTTP, if you are only using HTTP, I can show you, you can easily get the content of the file. Okay, so whatever is stored in the website, I can easily get a content of that. Okay, I can show you by using Wireshark. I can show you by using simple commands. Okay, so it's very simple to get if your page is not very secure. If your page is only HTTP, you can get all the things that is being there. Okay, so suppose anything, any particular system is connected to your Wi-Fi, and that particular person is not surfing a secure site if there is no HTTPS here. Okay, now what this S do is it encrypt everything. Okay, so however you are able to get that they are surfing this site, but you are not able to see anything. Okay, so it will be like this, equal to percentage p. If you are able to get the page, something like this will be written and you will not understand anything because it is encrypted. But if there is no S here, so anybody is, if right now there are many HTTP sites, but it's way less now. But there are some HTTP sites there. Okay, so I'll show you HTTP sites where you can get the contents of the page, and whatever a particular person is saying, you can able to see it yourself. Okay, so that is the disadvantage of using only HTTP. Okay, so I'm again saying that it is not specific to JavaScript. It can be applicable to other scripting languages if you're using. Okay, another thing is a insecure deserialization. Okay, so what happens, what is the meaning of this here deserialization is that whenever firstly you have to understand serialization. Okay, so whenever you are going towards a particular page, that particular page will be consisting of data structures and other things. So what they are formed serially. Okay, so the data structures that are using in the website, and the TTL, sorry, the data structures, the contents of the page, and the time to live. So this is the packet size or packet, what do you say, header entity. Okay, time to live means that this particular packet will, how many seconds it will be there. Okay, so like 3 seconds or 4 seconds, after that it will vanish. Okay, so I'll tell you about these things. These things are a part of computer networks, but don't worry, I'll tell you about these things when I go into the practicality part. Okay, so what happens in deserialization is it is the opposite of serialization. Okay, so what happens in this insecure deserialization is when user controllable data is deserialized by the website. Okay, so sometimes a website can deserialize your data. It means that a particular serial what do you say, packet is protected by the website, but some websites do not do that. Okay, so your data structure, your content of the page, and everything that is written in the packet is secure. Okay, so some particular websites do not do that. So that is why this is you can deserialize, means you can get whatever is written in this. Okay, so serialization means you can get 1 2 3 4. Deserialization means you can get the content like 4 3 2 1, one by one. Okay, so this is referred to as deserialization via website. Okay, so this potentially enables an attacker to manipulate serialized objects in order to pass harmful data. Okay, so you can, this is again, I'll show you this attack. Okay, so don't worry about, just we are reading the introduction of it, but we will do each and everything in detail. Don't worry about that. Okay, so these are some common vulnerabilities. Don't worry about that. Another thing is using components with no vulnerability. So there are many particular applications are there from by which you can get to know that a particular vulnerability exists in a system. Okay, so a particular vulnerability can be anything. Like if you're seeing the common vulnerabilities, so that can also be verified with the software. Okay, so supposedly if you have any kind of a software like nmap, you will be able to get that which particular ports are open. Okay, so many ports are open, they are in your computer, because whenever you are communicating with the internet, there may be some ports. Okay, so mostly the ports will be 80 and 440. So these are not very secure ports. Okay, in Linux you hardly find these particular ports open, but in Windows these particular ports are open and they are very harmful. So nowadays Windows 10 and 11 try to close these ports, but we'll check in the experiment whether these particular ports are open or not. Okay, so now what are ports? What is this? Again, this is part of a transport layer. I will tell you each and everything about it. Don't worry about it. Okay, so my main funda is that you have to get the background knowledge, then we will move forward. Okay, so I will not teach you anything that is there on the advanced level, because in the experiment you may see many things that you do not know nothing about. So I have to tell you the previous things that where this particular terms came from. Okay, so you have to bear with me. So I do not I do not just directly tell you that this is this and this is this and this is fine. Okay, so transport layer is, again, you have studied in computer networks that there is a OSI layer architecture, and this is the fourth layer of. Okay, so what are the ports? What are these things? Don't worry about it. I'll explain you when I come to this attack. Okay. Another thing is insufficient logging and monitoring. So it is again that you have stored your many of the many of the password breaches have occurred like 100 days ago and 200 days ago. Many of the industries do not even know that there been a attack. Okay, so that comes under insufficient logging and monitoring. So many of the organization do not even monitor their system. Okay, so maybe there will be a data breach, and many industry do not know nothing about that. Okay, so that can also happen. Okay, so these are some common vulnerabilities. They are not only specific to Linux. They can also, these are common to Windows and Linux. Keep that in mind. Okay, so what are now, what are the cyber security threats? Okay, so threats are very specific thing. Vulnerability is like a generalized thing, and threats are very specific thing. Okay, so it means that threats can arise inside of your system or can be created from outside of the system. Okay, so threats may that threats most of the time will be intentional. Okay, so if anybody wants to put a virus in your computer, that is pretty much intentional. Okay, so they do not want to get into your system unintentionally. Okay, so that is the main difference between a threat and a vulnerability. So vulnerability is usually unintentional. So most of the time the user, the software engineer who have created a particular software do not know about the vulnerability. That is the responsibility of a security engineer. Keep that in mind. Okay, so threats are very specific. Vulnerabilities are what you say are a general thing. Okay, so I can say that there is an injection is a vulnerability, but SQL injection is a threat. Okay, so I got to the specific part. So injection is a vulnerability, but SQL injection is a threat. Keep that in mind. Okay, so there are viruses, computer worm, Trojans. Okay, so all of these have different. Okay, so most of the time people say that these are the same thing, but they are very different to each other. Okay, so viruses and worms. So again, the viruses is like it mostly will be you find in email attachment. I'll just list out the main parts here that differentiate it from worms. Okay, so viruses mostly will be found in email attachments, and they are mostly exe files. Okay, so when you double click it, it may perform, uh, it can perform what you say a set of actions. Okay, set of action means that it can delete your files, delete some files, delete files or important files, or your core files also. So it can also happen that your operating system boot files. So this is the main step. So the viruses cannot be operated remotely. Keep that in mind. They are not remote. It cannot be operated remotely. It cannot install any software so that you can get into the system remotely. Okay. So this is the main thing. Now, the main purpose of virus is to perform set of actions. To perform a set of action. Might be it can delete a file, it can do some changes in the system, it can modify a little bit of the things. Okay, so it cannot do more than that. Okay, so the main purpose of worms is to replicate. Okay, so this is the difference between itself. Okay, replicate means that it if there is a if there is a worm in your mobile, so what it'll do, it will take your contact list and it will send itself to your what you say contacts. Okay, so this is the main difference between a virus and a computer worm and a virus. Okay, so computer worms are very similar. Again, it performs a set of action. Only thing that is difference is that it replicates itself. Okay, so they spread from one computer to another. They can take your email list and that send themselves to your contacts. Okay, so the contacts will directly open it because they know that a particular mail is sent by you. Okay, so that is where the trust factor came in. Okay. So, or usually themselves to all the contacts and subsequently to all the contacts contact. Okay, so they get to their contacts and contacts and so on and so on. Okay, so again, now these are mostly be tackled by what you say antiviruses. Okay, so the threats have been handled by antiviruses, but there is no antivirus for vulnerability. Keep that in mind. Okay, so threats are largely known. Okay, because specific things are always largely known, and the general things are not actually known. That how you know that from this particular vulnerability this threat can arise. Okay, so understand the difference between a threat and a vulnerability. Okay, so a computer antivirus is already there to tackle those things, but there is no antivirus to tackle a vulnerability. Keep that in mind. Okay, so what is the difference between a Trojan? So Trojan, I think if you have what do you see, a film, a movie, I think came Troy. I think that the film movie name was Troy. In this, there what they do is that they send a horse. Okay, so they send a horse there to their what do you say? There are two particular tribes that are fighting. Okay, so one and two. So this particular tribe send a particular what do you say, a horse. Okay, in that particular horse, many particular soldiers are being hidden. Okay, so the horse was very big, and they send it to particular another tribe saying that we do not want to fight, so we just want a peace. Okay, so they accepted that horse thinking that it's a gesture of peace. So what they do after everybody is sleeping, from this particular horse, many soldiers came out and they captured the tribe. Okay. So it's a simple thing. Now it is again applicable to this. Now what the Trojan is seems like a legitimate software. Okay. So it means that uh, you think that this is, you cannot think that this is a virus or a worm. It seems like a legitimate software which is instructed to do simple things. Okay, so it can change your system, it can gain your remote access, it can keep a watch whatever you are doing. Okay, so these malicious piece of softwares insert themselves into a legitimate program, often people voluntarily. Okay, so because they do not know that this particular program will be harmful, like the cleaners you mostly may have seen in your mobiles or in your software to clean your what you say temporary files. Okay, so this let Trojan into the system in their email messages from a person or an advertise they trust. Okay, so Trojans are very simple. So they just keep a habit, just keep a record of that. What they do not do, what you say, a very what you say big uh, damage to your system. They just use, or you can say they are usually used to steal users' data. Okay, so that is very similar to adwares and other things. Okay, so bogus software security update. Now this is again an example that you have seen in the ATM part. Okay, so there will be no security update, but people, if you are installing it by third party, that can happen that your there may be some of the things that are added in the software update so that it can steal the data from your system. Okay, so that tricks into the users into believing that into the system that has been infected with the virus. Okay, so another thing is Adware. So Adware is this main task is to just uh, track your browsing habits. Okay, so they do not do anything else. They just create a record that a particular users uses this, and they shows ad accordingly. Like Facebook is basically adware. Okay, so our if you in your mobiles, the Facebook is already there, or Instagram is already there, or WhatsApp is already there, so they are always listening to you. So if you say a specific product, you may see that there are some kind of ad popping up in your Instagram feed or in your Facebook feed. Okay, so these are referred now. There was a term called adware, but now all the companies are kind of adware. Okay, now another was is a spyware. So spyware is basically for stealing many money related information like credit cards number or debit card numbers and anything. Okay. So if you're storing your credit card and debit card data on your browsers, it may happen that this particular spyware can take your credit card, debit card or passwords for that matter. Okay. It can steal sensitive information such as password, credit card from your internal system. Okay. Another thing is DOS attack, that is denial of service attack. Okay, so this particularly happens. What happens is that a particular user is surfing a website, and this particular third party just send a lots of traffic to this particular website so that that website is down. Okay, so this is referred to as denial of service because this particular website is dealing with a lot of traffic. So when you try to log into it, it will deny your service. So suppose if you are checking your results, uh, previously we used to check results and we will never get the result of results. Like if you are getting IIT and JEE cards, most of the time that the website is down. Okay, so right now there are many ways to fix this, but still many times your website will be down. Okay, so this is referred to as denial of service attack. Okay, so a website, just wait a second. Okay. Okay, so denial of service attack is that. Okay, so most of the time what will happen here that you will not be able to access the website thinking that your server is down, but actually the server of the uh, of the uh, of the destination address will be down. There is another thing called phishing attack, Sql injection. I think we have already studied this. And man in the middle attack. Man in the middle attack is nothing, just when you are exchanging information between two particular host or a host and a server, this particular system can access it. Okay, so there is a very popular examples. I'll give you in cryptography. So that is why the cryptography part was invented. So if this particular third party is able to access your packet, but this particular what do you say, third party will not get what is written inside that packet because it is encrypted. Okay, so that is where your cryptography came in. Okay, don't worry about the cryptography, I'll also tell you about it. Okay, so just cryptography needs to do encryption. Now what is encryption means? Encryption means that if you're writing a plain text like, okay, so like Sam, okay, so that will be converted into a cipher text that is not understandable by anyone. Okay, so like plus, multiply, divide, or anything like MAS, you can change the letter. There are many kinds of ciphers. I will tell each and every one of it. Okay. Now phishing attacks link to your website saying that they are sending an email to your website saying that your bank account is being hacked. So you just go towards this particular website. On the link will be given in the mail, go to this website to change your password. Okay, so that is referred to as a phishing attack. And when you open the website, it will seems a very legitimate website. And when you enter your previous password, the hackers will know the your what you say your current password. Okay, so that is the main thing. Keep that in mind. Phishing attacks are just mostly, it seems like that they have been sent from a trusted source, and when you click on the link, they will take you a website, and that website will be very close to the original website. Okay, so that's very difficult to know the differences. Okay, so this particular attacks got very popular like 10 years back, but all the banks and other financial resources have given this that do not open any kind of a link send from our bank, because we do not send any kind of links. uh, so they have issued a particular guideline that to never click on the link that came in your email. So always go outside of the email and write your what you say address. Okay, so if you are in SBI, you always write www.sbi.co.in. If you are from other, never click the link that you get in the email. Okay, so again there are some rootkit tools. Rootkit tools are uh, there are many kinds of tool there. These are mainly these are malwares to get your passwords. Okay, so these are mainly there. I will tell you about these as well. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's just an introduction to what we will be going to study, so don't worry about it. Everything we are seeing here, we will be implementing it in our labs. Okay, so like I'm saying SQL injection, the SQL injection I'll try to implement in the lab so that you understand it. So don't think like it's a very simple that you will just click a little bit of buttons and you will get it. It's much more complex than that. Okay, so it may be a little bit boring, but if you keep into it, you get to know many things. Okay, so because there are many concepts that you do not understand right now. Like if I open Wireshark and there is any kind of a TCP packet. Okay, so if I intercept a TCP packet, now you do not know what is the TCP. Okay, so what in this TCP is there? What is the headings of this TCP? So that is why I'm saying that it will be a little bit boring, but if you keep with it, it will get a very interesting. Okay, so if you understand the things, you can easily make sense out of this. Okay, so if you are, I'll show you. Don't worry about that part, but just keep with me. If you are not understanding anything, just let me know. Computer networks is sorry. After computer networks, this network security is a very interesting subject, because you will study theory in computer networks, but you will implement those attacks in this particular network security. Okay, so there are some flags that are there in TCP, but you have to understand how those things work in order to implement these things. Okay, so don't worry. So now this is the main difference in threat, vulnerability, and risk. Okay. So risk is that risk. There are security engineers that calculate the risk there. Okay. So if you want to go into computer security, you have to give this matrix. Okay. So there will be a little bit of a matrix that I have calculated, that there will be this amount of risk that can be there. Okay, so I'll tell you how to analyze risk. Don't worry about it. Firstly, I have to tell you about what is the job of a security engineer. Then we move on towards the risk. Okay, so risk is just what you say, it can arise. Okay, so you are already what you say preventing it from arising. Okay, so it's like that. So like if you are studying what you say software engineering, there is a risk assessment models called a spiral model. Okay, so what happens in that spiral model is that in every particular step, in every spiral, you have to calculate the risk. Okay, so whenever you're doing everything design, the software cycle, every time you have to, every spiral you have to calculate the risk. I have to calculate the risk here, you have to calculate the risk here. So I'll tell you about it, don't worry. So again, what is the difference between a threat and a vulnerability and a risk? Okay, so take advantage of the vulnerabilities in the system. Okay, so threat is very specific. It cannot be controlled. If like you cannot control viruses. Okay, so if a virus is in your system, it has to do a specific task. For it to be controlled, you do not, the first step is to do not get this virus execute a series of steps. Okay, so that can only be done with the help of an antivirus. Okay, so it can take advantage of the vulnerability in the system and have the potential to steal or damage data. Mostly it is used to damage the data. Okay, so it will delete a series of files. It can steal, or it can take the information from your system. Okay, vulnerability is known as the weakness in the hardware. So which might allow cyber threats to happen. Okay, so the difference between a threat and a vulnerability, I'll give you one point, that the vulnerability is unintentional, so you do not know. Another thing is that antivirus threats are always, you can say that threats are intentional or unintentional, because there may be some things that you are keeping in the system due to which a threat can arise. Okay, so suppose that you're storing your passwords on the system, so this is like that you are giving like that if your machine is being hacked, the particular passwords can also be taken. Okay, so you can say that vulnerability is always unintentional. You can just say one thing about that: because you have designed a system, you do not know that there is a weakness in the system. It can only be done by the security engineer. But threat are very specific. They may be unintentional, but mostly they are intentional. Okay, so like computer viruses being sent from the outside source, so this is very intentional. Okay, so another intentional thing will be computer bombs that are being sent to you. Okay, so everything that is sending to you are very intentional, but if you are opening it knowing that this particular thing is a computer virus or a worm, then it is intentional. Okay, so keep that in mind. Two main things, that threats are very specific. Okay, so if I'm giving you example, that I can say SQL injection is a threat, and vulnerability is very general. Okay, so kind of injection, I can say injection is a threat. Injection is a vulnerability. Okay, so generally can't be controlled. So if it is there, you cannot control it. It can be controlled. Okay, so if there are security engineers there, you can just tell them that just find the weakness in the system. They can control it. Okay, so risk can also be controlled. The security engineer can easily control the risk uh, by using preventive measures. Okay, so the potential of loss and destruction of data is caused by cyber threats. Okay, this is referred to as risk, that the security engineer already taken the risks into account. Okay, so generally can be controlled. It may or not may not be intentional. Mostly it is intentional. Keep that in mind. Mostly it is intentional, but there are some cases where it is not intentional. Okay, generally unintentional, always intentional, because you are calculating the risk, and these risks are very intentional. Okay, it can be blocked by managing the vulnerabilities. So the threats arise due to vulnerabilities. Okay, so that is one more thing that you have to differentiate, that if there is a vulnerability in the system, then there is a threat. Okay, vulnerability management is a process of identifying the problems, categorize them, prioritize them. So this will you will this vulnerability will be deeply studied in penetration testing. Okay, so what happens in penetration testing, that you are giving a certain set of vulnerabilities to exploit those vulnerability to get in the system. Okay, so there are many common vulnerability that you will find, and that you will do experiments on, that will happen in penetration testing. Okay, so I'll give you one or two vulnerability where we can get into the system, like SQL injections and other things. Okay, so it can be detected by antivirus software. It's very easy, and it can be detected by penetration testing. Keep that in mind. Vulnerability can only be detected by penetration testing. There is no antivirus software, because the threats are already well known and vulnerabilities are not that well known. Okay, so that is the difference between them. Okay, another thing is it can be detected by identifying mysterious emails, suspicious pop-ups. So risk analysis is a kind of a study that you have to take into account all the things of the client. Okay, so whatever the client will give each and every inch of the detail of the software or of the system, so that a particular security engineer can provide a risk assessment of their software or any product they are launching. Okay, so this is the main thing, that what is the main thing is that what is the difference between a threat and a vulnerability. So I'll go towards the risk part because there is a risk part there. So one thing that is referred to as a risk mitigation. Okay. So don't worry about that. Just you have to understand these 2 points, that is threat and vulnerability. Due to vulnerability, a threat can arise. Okay. One thing, threat will mostly be intentional and vulnerability may be mostly be generally it is unintentional. Another thing is threat can be identified with the help of a antivirus software, and vulnerability can be identified with the help of penetration testing. Okay, so only these are the main points between a threat and a vulnerability. Keep that in mind. Okay, so moving on to the further topic. Just wait a second. Okay, so just let me check. Okay. So next topic is risk assessment or risk mitigation. Another is security engineering. Okay. So I think 45 minutes. I do not want to leave the topic in between. So I think we will study this particular topic in the next one. Okay. So till here, if anybody has any doubt, let me know. Any doubt? Have you understand the difference between a threat and a vulnerability? So I'll give you some questions also in the next so that we will get the revision of this one. Okay. Anyone that have a doubt, just let me know. Till here, anybody has a doubt?
No, sir.
Okay. So, okay. So I think that's it. I do not want to leave the topic in between the security engineering. So I think we will study that in the next one. Okay. So shall I close this lecture, or if you want to study, I can continue with it. Okay. Let me know. Anybody?
Sir, as you wish, sir, no problem.
Okay. Okay. So I think we'll do it in the next one. Okay. So you can move on to the next.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.